Oh my gosh, Spader's back at it again. What's he doing this time? A bouncing ball. I am going to animate a bouncing ball. Yeah, let's get rid of a stick figure because it's a bouncing ball, not a bouncing stick figure. And let us, I don't know. Let us get a ball. Create a stick figure, but I'm going to make it an ellipse instead and make it stretchy. Why is that, you might ask? To that I answer, stop asking questions. I'm joking, by the way. Answer as many questions as you need. Alright, we're gonna say that, I don't know, ball. So, add it to the library. Now, you might be wondering, why make an ellipse? Well, I'll show you. Because when animating a bouncing ball, yeah, I'll just make it bigger. It's like, sure, yeah, you could just make it go like that and like boing, boing. You know, like, yeah, you can do that. But do you really want to? Like, really want to? Because that's kind of boring, not gonna lie. Let's make it a bit more fun, you know? Let's just, like, kind of put that like that. I don't know. Let's do a starting position. Now, one thing I want to do, the reason why I added ellipse, something called squash and stretch. So I guess this tutorial is kind of like a squash and stretch tutorial too. But that's too big to put in the title, so whatever. I mean, might have a dedicated tutorial in the future. Anyways, let's just say that's the first frame. Actually, yeah, let me make the background white. That way it's easier to see. Or maybe just a light gray, I don't know. That's whatever. Okay, first frame. And then it's gonna ease because, well, you know, it's always good to ease things. But then you're gonna stretch it as it speeds up. Of course, a lot of stretching is gonna make it look like a cartoon, like if you make it like stretch like from where it came from. But you don't need that much stretching. You want to kind of stretch it in the path that it's going. So I might actually make it stretch a bit more vertically. No, that's not looking good so far. Okay, well, whatever. That's good. That should be good. As it speeds up and gravity pulls on it, it's also going to have a steeper angle towards the ground. It's not just going to like travel completely straight in a straight line. So stretch more as it speeds up. Realistically talking, it would have the same mass, so you might make it even thinner as it stretches out, like it becomes longer, but it becomes thinner. That also works, but I don't have the time to do that. As you can tell, it's already, yeah, you get it. By the way, in a lot of tutorials, I usually use 12 FPS because I don't animate a lot of frames. I don't even, like, use my usual 18 FPS. Because that means more frames, and as long as I'm getting the idea across, then that should be all that matters. Here, let me actually test something out. Something I'm curious about. Because it speeds up. And we gotta have a moment of contact. Now, would we... I don't know. Let's see. Have it kind of in the ground a bit. And then we're gonna squish it. We're gonna squash it instead of stretching because, well, it hit the ground really fast and it's a really bouncy, elastic ball. So, of course, it's a good example for squash and stretch. In fact, like I said, when it stretches out, it gets thinner. This would be a good time to actually make it wider. Because it gets shorter, but it will get wider. But of course, like I said, I'm not really worried about the width. But yeah, the width would definitely help in any other animation here, like to emphasize that squash. But yeah. Then it's gonna spring back up. Now, one thing I actually want to mention, which is actually something I learned really recently, and it's actually really simple. Typically, one thing I've noticed with balls bouncing is that they all have, like, they all bounce to a certain, not ratio, but like the same height in comparison to the last bounce, if that makes any sense here. Like, I'll explain. Like, if so the ball's starting up here, and the ground's down here, so halfway through, like halfway up, is going to be the arc of the next one I make. And then after this bounce, the next bounce after it's going to be half the height of this bounce. That's just going to be this one. Of course, it could be 2/3 of the height every bounce. It could be less. Just depends on how bouncy it is, you know? Because that also goes into it. You also want to make sure, as long as the as long as the floor is flat, the angle that it bounces at, that comes in at, is the angle that it's going to go out at. Of course, it can be really hard to make this perfect. I guess I could also use a trick of, if we find the angle, if you want to be really precise, then we can find the segment angle. So it's 100 here, 90 is going to be completely vertically up, 100 is 10 degrees to, well, we'll say the left. So going up, it's going to be 10 degrees to the right, which would be 80. Now that I think about it, I think I've spaced it badly. Oh well, you know what? It's a tutorial, you're all learning, I can learn too. So, let's just see what happens if we fix the spacing a little bit. So let's move this down a bit. And let's delete this frame. I mean, we can delete this frame and the one after, but oh wait, that's not delete frame. What am I doing? We can move this up. Of course, a little more at an angle. That's okay. Maybe this doesn't have to stretch out as much. Oh yeah, we had it at 80 degrees, didn't we? Oh well, that angle changed. We can change that one too. Yeah, that works. And it's gonna slow down, so it's gonna stop stretching so much. Here, you wanna kind of know, you can use like a line. Here, I can even do it. Show guides. And I can put the line to, it's kind of hard to see with like the light gray background. I can kind of see it on my screen, I don't know if you guys can see it. But I'll put that to like around I'll put that to around like halfway like that. Yeah, that'll be halfway. So we want to make sure, yeah, it's good that we caught that. Because we want to make sure the ball bounces around halfway as high each time. We can yeah, you can kind of move it like that. Now you want to make the arc kind of equal. You want to make it symmetrical. So this is going to be the peak of the bounce, the arc, the vertex, that's what it is. The vertex of the parabola. Because every gravitational movement that like has no interruption to it and follows straight towards the center of gravity, it's going to be a perfect parabola, which is something that most of you probably learned in math. In fact, you guys probably learned a lot of like gravity related questions in math. So you're gonna make it fall down again. Maybe not stretch that much. Of course, we want it to kind of mirror, bounce up. Okay, even lower. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. Animators are humans, so just remember that when you have unrealistic expectations, especially the person that I'm mainly aiming that to, you know who you are if you're watching. Don't have unrealistic expectations for yourself, because it can be really unhealthy and end up causing you more harm than good. So we already had that peak done. We can just move the guide to like around half of that height. So as you can tell, it's not going to bounce as high every time. I know I make this tutorial look a bit complex, like a lot of people just randomly animate like a ball simply bouncing, and that's fine, you know? You don't have to use all the squash and stretch, you don't gotta be like so specific with how like the ball moves and like how high it goes and stuff like that, and, like the symmetry of the arcs. You can do what you want, you know? But this is just kind of like my way of like how I would ideally animate a ball bouncing. And even I'm pretty inexperienced. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Even I'm forgetting one or two things. Also, another thing I should mention, which I just remembered now, the slower it goes when it hits the ground, the less it needs to squash. And of course, the slower it's going, the less it needs to stretch. So, let's just make it bounce again, I guess. It can be pretty much a perfect circle at this point. It might not even change form at all. This is actually kind of bad. I should move it to the, yeah, and that should be good. I might not even have to change it now. Of course, I'm going to change that spacing, because it should speed up. With spacing, when you always gotta have a frame of impact, so you can't have like a frame where it's above the ground, but like say it's close and it's like, okay, if this were like a video, the frame like it wouldn't capture the frame where it hits the ground, so the next frame would be up here, because it already hit the ground between frames. But in animation, you really can't do that. Well, I mean, you can, but it's not recommended because, well, you want to show the frame of impact. That goes with a lot of things like punches or like a car crashing. The frame of sort of connection, you know? It has to be shown to the viewer. So you'd preferably edit the frames to change the spacing, so that way it all matches and goes together to where you can make a frame of contact. Of course, since it's moving so slow, I don't have to swash it. You can just kind of stay like that. I know at one point it's gonna be moving so slow that like it won't bounce. Its weight won't be enough to get it to bounce off the ground. And eventually it'll slow down. And roll to a stop, which once again requires using, believe it or not. Yeah, that's... No, of course it's not perfect. In fact, the spacing at the end, where it slows down, it should ease even more, because it kind of moves faster horizontally than it does on the last bounce. So it actually slowed down a lot more. Yeah. Like I said, it's honestly really not perfect. But yeah, I guess it's good enough for a basic ball bounce. So I hope that gets the point across. And yeah, eventually, I'm gonna get around to showing you how to make a base. I might make a tutorial eventually on exploring the menu screen of stick notes, showing off all the settings and like what all the buttons do. Maybe, I don't know. If people really want me to do it, then sure, I'll do it. But yeah, that should be it for this video. I've probably been recording for a while, even though it's like just doing one simple thing, making a simple animation, but there's more that goes into it than the other animations I've made in tutorials. Well, anyways, I'll see you next time, and bye.